a world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Monday, the 22nd of June, year of our Lord 2026. Well, the Reflecting Pond Project continues to reflect on the character of Trump, on his corruption, on his ego, on his swamp slime. And we've got some new updates about this, showing more of his obsession and his recriminations against people who embarrass him. And as we look at what happened over the weekend to the peace deal, it really does show his character there as well. His trolling of other leaders, trying to make himself look big as his war is failing, and then he sabotaged the peace talks with threats after withering criticism from his Zionist owners. And so we're going to take a look at how we've got the media as well as the Trump administration incredibly pushing the Trump genetic code injections. As Big Pharma owns the media with this, they are going on a new offensive. They're even telling us that it's great for your heart health, turning the truth upside down. Well, we're going to be right back. And we also have some news about liberty and about attacks on the family, homeschooling, and other issues as they continue to ramp up digital currency, as well as surveillance and ID. They're going after homeschools, of course, as well, because everything needs to be under their control. Both the left and the right agree about that, don't they? And so the question is, do we run away from the bad news, or do we run to the good news? And we're going to talk about that coming up as well. So there's no way this guy who got the no-bid contract for using bottom shelf Home Depot sealant on the reflecting pool looks like this, said one person. And but it does actually look like that. And, when you look at his background, it looks even worse. As a matter of fact, here he is looking like a cartoon villain with a cigar and his multiple parts that he's got on his toupee that he's got there, and his gal right there beside him. This guy is a Trump donor. He is a Mar-a-Lago neighbor. His name is John Kafaro. He got the no-bid contract for water purification system for the reflecting pool. He's got 2 prior convictions, one for bribing a member of Congress and another for an illegal loan that violated campaign finance. So he has a habit of paying off politicians. I'm sure that didn't happen with Trump, don't you think?
No, he's just the best at, creating reflecting pools of no-bid contracts.
That's right. Well, this is the kind of pond scum, this guy right here is the kind of pond scum that you see around following Trump everywhere he goes. So, of course, it'd be in a reflecting pool because it is a perfect reflection of him. But, Trump over the weekend has shown that he's not only green with envy over what other people have done, but he's also red with rage. What happens when you combine green with red? You get yellow. And he turned yellow when it came to standing up to his Zionist warmonger owners, especially with Mark Levin leading the charge. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, but I'm not done with this pond scum nonsense here. As a matter of fact, one of the things is when he starts failing, of course, the first response is to just flat out lie, but then it's to get even with other people. And we see that happening as well. This headline from Mediaite, Art of the Peel. Art of the Peel. Tourists are tearing off pieces of the pool's peeling paint to take home with them as souvenirs. And as they point out, this is a CNN correspondent, Tom Foreman. He said they're still trying to remove all that algae from the reflecting pool, but they're having to deal with new problems, including parts of the pool's floor now appearing to be peeling off. We had seen before people showing pictures of flaps of blue material and things that were floating in the water. But it appears to be peeling off. And they say, well, it may have been caused or at least exacerbated by the hydrogen peroxide. As many people pointed out, hydrogen peroxide in a concentrated form, which is what they were using to control the algae. In a concentrated form, it actually is a paint solvent. And so it could actually be, at the very least, exacerbating the problem. However, Trump is not going to go there. Instead, he's going to blame the people who are taking the souvenirs. And it's far more than just blame. He had one person arrested and has charged him with vandalism, or whatever the Park Service has charged him with. Tourists are coming along, tearing off pieces to take as souvenirs, said Foreman, the CNN reporter. He said, did they cause the problem? Well, I don't know. Did they exacerbate it? Maybe. But we don't have any proof about that. And of course, Trump was bragging when this all started. He said, this is so tough. You could try to take a knife and pull this off, but you can't really get it off. Well, turns out now he's saying that this doesn't have anything to do with him, doesn't have anything to do with this pond scum contractor who has been convicted twice of bribing people to get what he wants, and he got a no-bid contract from Trump. I wonder how that happened. So the reporter also showed an output hose that was pouring into a drain that was clearly green, despite the fact that federal officials are claiming that the water was, quote, absolutely clear and perfect. You see, this is another example of their character and their conduct. Even when we can see the green water pouring into the pond, they will insist that it's absolutely clear, that it's perfect, that there's no algae in it. Sorry, that's not green. I don't see anything. Do you see anything? This is a standard reply from the Trump regime, and it is something that has always been just below the surface in Washington anyway. Now it's floating on the surface. This kind of arrogance, this kind of in-your-face lying, things that we can clearly see for ourselves. And then if we point out that this emperor king has no clothes, then he takes revenge when you point out what is laughably absurd about him. So a former Olympian has been charged with vandalism after he said he checked out the peeling blue bottom of the reflecting pool. He was arrested and charged with, quote, destruction of government property, after pausing on his bike ride to check out the algae-ridden reflecting pool that was peeling at the bottom. David Hearn, a 67-year-old three-time Olympian in canoe slalom, whatever that is. You get in a canoe and you get pulled real fast behind the ski boat? I don't know. That's the only slalom I know about in the water. But anyway, he said he stopped at the pool Saturday while finishing up a leg of a 52-mile bike ride. Hats off, 67 years old, and he's doing a 52-mile bike ride. Park police officers arrested him on a misdemeanor charge after he said he'd reached into the water to experience what he wanted to see what the detached blue liner felt like. He said, I reached in there and I was able to grab the end of that flapping piece that was already peeling. It was still attached to the bottom. I didn't remove anything. I touched it, right? I didn't vandalize anything. I didn't destroy or break or peel anything. By the time I realized what was going on, I was being put in handcuffs. Oh, they're really angry about people noticing their failure.
And I wonder how much of this that we're hearing about is because it's a Olympic athlete. You know, are they just arresting any random person? I feel like this couldn't be a isolated thing, that the only person they arrested happened to be a ex-Olympian.
They may have arrested some other people, but we haven't heard about it because of
That's
that.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, he got to the news about it. Reflecting pool was plagued with pea green algae just days after the crew completed coating the bottom with blue sealant in a $14 million renovation that Trump claimed would last for 50 years. The U.S. Park Service tried to remedy the slimy situation with gallons of hydrogen peroxide, a known paint stripper at high concentration, and then the sealant began peeling away. Yeah, it's called a peelant now. It's not a sealant. But that is par for the course, isn't it? When you look at what Trump is doing. And of course, it didn't just stop there either. He was trolling politicians as he always does. This one was at the G7 as the thing began last week, as we were talking about it when Cheryl Slinty was on Wednesday. Trump walks in, and everybody is pretty much already seated, so he waits to be the last one to come in, of course, to show how powerful he is. And he stops, and he goes, "I'm the boss," and then he sits down. That is the ego on display. The ego has landed. He said then about Meloni, he said, "She begged me to take a photo with her. She wanted a photo with me so badly, I could have skipped it. But I felt sorry for her," he told the Italian newspaper. She said she was absolutely stunned by his comments. As a matter of fact, Lance got her comments in English. We've seen the subtitled versions of her comments, but what he did was he had her speak it in English and, of course, with an Italian accent.
Well, some things deserve an immediate response. Donald Trump's statements are completely made up. I'm honestly shocked. I just don't understand why the President of the United States acts this way with his own allies. This isn't the first time it's happened, after all. I can only say it's unfortunate he doesn't show the same determination with the enemies of the West, with the enemies of the United States, with leaders he is much more accommodating to. But there's one thing to remember. Italy and I never beg.
Don't get her angry, yeah. And so then, of course, he can't leave it there. He's got to escalate it again. He's got to have a comeback, and he did have a comeback. He has to belittle other people to make himself look big. What does that tell you about him? Yeah, I'm the boss, and she was begging for a picture with me. And so she said, this is not the first time this has happened, of course. And so he came back after her the next day and said, she wants to get around me because I'm so popular. And she needs to get a little bit more popular there. And as a result of that, she and a stream of Italian politicians condemned Trump's remarks, branding them offensive to the entirety of Italy. And the foreign minister has now canceled a planned trip to the U.S. next week. Everywhere he goes, he makes enemies unnecessarily. And of course, he began with all this trolling of Canada, of all things. And then he goes after Greenland and so forth. So what he said in terms of his comeback after that, he said, well, she's doing poorly in Italy with her level of popularity. Now, after the United States defeated Iran militarily, no, that didn't happen. This is the same lie about his green pond scum. We can all see what happened there as well. She wants to be friends again in order to get her numbers back up. No thanks. Does Trump not realize where his numbers are headed? Into the drain? These constant, unprovoked attacks, she replied, are senseless. As for my popularity, being your friend certainly has not helped it. Nor does it depend on my relationship with you. My popularity is none of your concern. I suggest you focus on yours because it is in free fall. She's probably happy I talked to her. I didn't have to talk to her, he said. He just keeps on, right? The ego has landed. Another video from the summit showed Meloni speaking and gesturing with Trump, and she's not really, doesn't look like she's too happy with him. Karen is Italian. I can pick up on the hand sign language here and the body language, I think. I think she's pretty much showing what she thinks about him. But anyway, it's not just her. It's a lot of foreign leaders who are fed up with Trump. He's just a troll that is trying to pick fights with people because that is his MO. He grew up in media with WWE, and that's where he wants to go. He knows that if he picks fights with people, that's what that was all about. It's all about silly stuff. Yeah, I'm going to go shave the guy's head, and he's going to sit there and make faces like he's steaming, but he's going to let me shave his head. This is what it's all about. This is his the way he understands media, and of course, it's worked for him. Surprisingly, it's worked for WWE as well. I never really understood that. Meloni has plenty of company these days, while Trump has long reveled in throwing his weight around in the world and forcing leaders to cater to him. Yeah, it's with his walking in. The boss, I'm the boss, right? Ego is landed here. So again, he's had this back and forth with Macron. Previously, he criticized Macron because there was that video of Macron standing in the door of the plane as he's about to walk down the steps, and you see his wife shoving his face. And so Trump trolled him with that. And instead of letting that go, he's got to make a point of it. He said Macron's wife treats him extremely badly. He's still recovering from that right to the jaw. And then Macron came back after Trump over this failed Iran war. Macron made veiled remarks aimed at Trump's handling of the Iran war. He said the war was not a show. No, he's wrong about that. It is a show. Everything that Trump does is a show. He urged his American counterpart to be more careful about his comments. He said, when you want to be serious, you don't say every day the opposite of what you said the day before. In other words, people will take you seriously. You can't keep changing. And actually, it's worse than that. Trump will change what he says about something the same day. He's such an incredible liar. German Prime Minister Fred Merz had his own comments suggesting in April that the Iranians were stringing Trump along. He said, and then letting the Americans travel to Islamabad only to send them back without any results. And of course, this is before we saw what happened over the weekend in Switzerland. An entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership, especially by these so-called Revolutionary Guards, said Fred Merz. And of course,
it's not the Iranian leadership that's embarrassing our entire nation.
Yeah, it's our leadership, our lack of leadership. Again, at the very beginning of this, the Spanish prime minister had called his war reckless, illegal, which is absolutely right. Said Spain would not be complicit in something that is bad for the world, simply out of fear of reprisal. Yeah, he's absolutely right about that. The government of Spain will not applaud those who set the world on fire just so they can show up with a bucket. That's basically what he's trying to say about the Strait of Hormuz. He's the one who closed it with his treacherous war of aggression, not even thinking about how he's going to win, not thinking about the consequences of it either. And then he got himself into this tar baby situation. And it's really hard for him to get out because the Zionists want to keep him in there. They've got a different agenda. Their agenda is not to change the regime leadership. Their agenda is not to stop any nuclear weapon development. No, Israel's agenda is the greater Israel agenda. They want everybody's land, and in order to do that, they do have to burn down the world. Then they go in with the rubble and they take it over and rebuild it according to the way they want to do it. This is the Great Reset version, the Zionist version of the Great Reset. Trump's trade wars irked Carney in Canada. He said he's using the tariffs as leverage, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. He said the middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. Well, that's exactly right. I'm no fan of Carney. This guy was the head banker at the Central Bank of Canada. Then he became the head banker of the Bank of England. This is a guy who's really on the inside of all these central banks and the globalist agenda. However, what Trump has done with these trade wars hurts Americans. It doesn't help us at all. And it is all simply about him throwing his power around, which is what Carney is saying. It's exactly right. Keir Starmer called Trump's comments claiming NATO troops in Afghanistan had avoided fighting on the front lines. He called that insulting and frankly appalling. And of course, what he did with the Japanese prime minister, trying to humiliate her over Pearl Harbor, which she had nothing to do with. This is the group of people that he was meeting with last week. So White House staff reportedly monitored Trump's trash because he was sometimes throwing out high-end silverware. Yeah, he's not just throwing out high-end silverware. He is throwing out their carefully constructed empire. He is doing that country by country. And as a matter of fact, when you look at how, this was written as a story to illustrate that he's maybe not altogether there. This is something that's reported by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, the book that they've got coming up, which is Regime. And that was the one that the Trump administration basically validated these extraordinary claims that are in there by saying, well, I think somebody's recording us. They must have a tape recorder in there, because that's essentially saying, yeah, it's all true. But then there's also this. Look at this video that somebody put up. What they did on the bottom half of the screen, they showed Joe Biden putting a medal around a person's neck and Trump doing it at the same time. And they compare how difficult it is for Trump to accomplish this so complicated task compared to Biden. Here we go. They're trying to get it around. They're about the same planet. Now we got to fasten it. Trump doesn't seem to know how to fasten it. Biden is finished. He's shaking his hand. That was about 12 seconds, 13 seconds. Trump is still working on it. How does that clip go? I bet he's more adept at taking off a bra. I bet you he could do that in light speed. How does this go? The poor guy's getting choked by him. He keeps pulling it tighter. There we go. There we go. Yeah, no impairment there whatsoever. So the staff had to begin monitoring the trash after it was discovered that he was sometimes throwing out White House sterling silver utensils. I guess it's just because he's used to eating at McDonald's, right? Usually throw away all that stuff. He treated all the same. And so this new book also reveals something else about this guy that is far more disturbing than his mental condition. It does reflect on his mental condition. Again, this book by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan, the book Regime, which Donald Trump and his people said, wait a minute, do they have a recorder somewhere? Is somebody taping all this stuff? They said that he showed them a document when they were interviewing him, arguing that he was more powerful than some of the most feared and treacherous leaders in history. People like Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Napoleon, Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. There's not a person on that list that a sane person would want to compare himself to, but Trump compares himself to all of them. Isn't that interesting? He had been asked by Haberman and Swan about the power to be wielded as president in his second term and about his place in history. Yes, I think he will be a part of that group, quite frankly, and not to his credit. It prompted him to tell the story of a 2-page document that he had received from a historian, quote unquote, during an event honoring the Hall of Fame golfer Gary Player. Trump proudly asked an aide to fetch a copy of the document. He saved it. He liked it so much. It argued that with each of the other leaders, however fearsome in their day, they had no global reach. Their power was local, but Trump's was not. Well, this is not a earth-shattering insight. This is the problem of where we are right now. As we see all of our leaders, not just Trump, and not just Trump, not just Biden, not just Republicans and Democrats in the United States, but all of the leaders in all of Western civilization, right at this point in time, they're all turning against the idea of the rule of law. They're turning against the idea of individual rights. They're turning against the idea of individual liberty. And they're doing it at a time when they are being handed tools, weapons, like artificial intelligence, that are going to allow them to have a global reach and an individual reach into each and every one of our lives. That is what is so concerning to me and should be concerning to you. The fact that this is a power that they never had before, and that's what Trump is saying. This technology has given tyrants like Trump, like Hitler, like Stalin, like Attila the Hun, like Genghis Khan, it has given them all the power to have not only a global reach, but an individual reach into each and every one of our lives. And that's what we should be concerned about. But he sees that as a great thing. How is he going to use that power? Well, we already know, because he and Marsha Blackburn have been putting this power to use in terms of establishing a permission society with IDs and changing our monetary system so they can follow and shut down anything and everything that we do. He recited the names of some of history's most powerful figures, explaining how each of them fell short of his own power as U.S. president. This guy is drunk with power. That should concern everyone. He said these leaders maintain their power through fear. Who would ever do a thing like that, right? Yeah, I could imagine the expression on his face when he said that. Sarcasm, right? Knowing that that's exactly what he seeks to do. It turned out that he was not a historian, this guy, but he was actually Player's longtime caddy. Well, you don't have to have credentials in order to tell the truth. And clearly, the reality of what the guy pointed out is absolutely true. He is drunk with power. He has absolutely no restrictions, moral or legal, as to anything that he does. These other guys had lesser of a reach. And this is like bragging about how many people you can kill because now you've got new and improved weapons. You know, the reach that is there is coming from technology. As a matter of fact, he's not the only one that has compared himself many times to Genghis Khan. Remember when Netanyahu did this? Well, when he talked about how, from a Machiavellian perspective, he thought that Genghis Khan was greater than Jesus Christ. That's his buddy, his alter ego, his twin brother, Netanyahu.
It's not enough to be moral. It's not enough to be just. It's not enough to be right. Well, history proves that, unfortunately and unhappily, Jesus Christ has no advantage over Genghis Khan. Because if you are strong enough, ruthless enough, powerful enough, evil will overcome good.
No, it won't.
Aggression will overcome moderation.
Not in the long term.
So you have no choice. If you look at the world as it is today, you have to be blind not to see.
He is blind.
Democracies led by the United States have to reassert their will to defend themselves.
We must become evil to triumph. We must become the monsters that we fight. This is, in a nutshell, folks, why the West is going down the toilet with leaders like Netanyahu and Trump. Because winning means that you get the other guy before they get you. You go to war aggressively, preemptively. You try to destroy entire civilizations. You commit genocide and war crimes. Because, hey, good guys finish last, right? And he, of course, as we've seen over and over again, completely rejects Christ and his teaching. No, that is not power. That is weakness. He is a slave to what he seeks, and that is his power and his wealth. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how Trump sabotaged peace, as well as caving into this Zionist pressure of evil. And oh, by the way, Nacho is still true. Not a chance. Hormuz opens. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
If you like the Eagles,
On a dark desert highway,
the Cars, and Huey Lewis in the News,
they say the heart of rock and roll is forbidden.
you'll love the Classic Hits channel at APS Radio. Download our app or listen now at apsradio.com.
Well, welcome back. And I just wanted to thank, we got a couple more checks this weekend. I just want to thank some of the people who donated to us. Our faithful producer here, one of many, Mary Ann, thank you so much for your generosity. And William G., thank you very much. Those are some checks we got in. And, of course, we're getting close to the end of the month. We're not getting close to the full mark on the gas gauge at davidknight.news. We have a contribution from Ryan for the love of the road. And if you remember, in the past, he gave us this commemorative gold coin, which we did a limited run of.
Gold color, I should specify.
Yeah, gold-colored coin. Yeah, it is not gold. It was precious metal. We had this much, this large. But it's a very nice colored coin on a gold background. And he's done another one in silver. And Lance put together an ad to have William Jennings Bryan explain to you the gold and silver importance.
In July of 1896, exactly 130 years ago, I warned this great nation of the government's plan to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Of course, that was before they started to bleed us dry with the death of 1,000 fiat paper cuts. But after you bought every single commemorative David Knight Show coin in gold color, the podcast's gold reserves are depleted. They issued 100 numbered gold-colored coins and declared the mint closed. The people cried out, "Free silver!" Well, the likes of J.P. Morgan can't stop this all-new commemorative coin. Now in silver color, while supplies last, this commemorative coin does not contain precious metal, but does keep the show on the air. Equal to the gold color, this limited run is numbered 1 to 100. Get yours today at thedavidknightshow.com. Hurry, because supplies are disappearing quicker than the purchasing power of the dollar.
That's right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate that, Ryan. Did a great job. I really like these coins. I kept one of the gold colored coins for myself and one of the 100. And so we've got these now at the website, davidknight.news. As a matter of fact, when you look at Trump, as I said, he pretty much caved over the weekend. He sabotaged single-handedly the peace talks that were about to take place in Switzerland before they even got started. Trolling people, just like he trolls Maloney and the other G7 members. Of course, he's trolling these people as well. But he'd taken a lot of incoming fire, a lot of it. It was withering. Most all of the mainstream media, of course, is either part of the military-industrial complex or part of the Zionist movement, or both. And his big donor, Miriam Adelson, a fellow casino fortune holder, although they did it and they made a lot of money out of it, unlike Trump, who went broke. Nevertheless, they're both stealing money from people, in my opinion. They're taking advantage of people, hustling. Anyway, she owns a newspaper with some of her ill-gotten gains, not just the presidency, but she owns a newspaper in Israel. And there was an open letter that came from that newspaper, said to Trump, "You failed." Again, a full court press from the neocons, from the Zionists, the press, the politicians, the pundits like Mark Levin, all of them were all over Trump. And so he responded over the weekend by shutting down the peace talks with his threats. An Israeli newspaper owned and published by Miriam Adelson accused him of betraying Israel and declaring that he failed. Because, Israel is the real country that he works for, right? How in the world could he betray them? You can betray the American people, but you can't betray Israel.
Well, he was working for Israel from the beginning, so it's not really betraying America when he stays loyal to his true masters. It's now that he hasn't obeyed every single detail that they say that he's a traitor, because you can never be obedient enough.
That's right. The headline was, "You could have been the greatest president of all." They don't say which country, but you failed. Israel's most widely distributed newspaper was the one that put this out. Trump may be remembered forever as the president who brought about America's humiliation. Well, on that point, we both agree. As a matter of fact, I got a comment here from Stealth Patriot. Thank you very much for the tip. Appreciate that. He says, I used to renovate pools. It takes an exorbitant amount of care and prep to paint a gunite pool with epoxy paint. You used to do the job right away. Every bit of all oil and dirt must be removed. This was a sloppy job. Yeah, and it is a difficult situation. I don't know what they did in terms of filling in the gaps, because when this pool was set up a century ago, more than a century ago, by the Grand Army of the Republic as part of their Lincoln Worship Project, the Lincoln Memorial, and then a big reflecting pond to enlarge him even further. They just basically put stone in at the bottom. They didn't seal it. And so that was one of the issues. It was leaking a lot of water. And so I don't know what they did to actually seal it. Denver Attaway says, this guy, the pool guy, he does look like the Batman villain Penguin, doesn't he? Or some kind of other mobster boss. This one is just reeking of a cartoon character from Dick Tracy or something, doesn't he? Anyway, Radis Bro said he looks like one of those railroad tycoons. Yeah, AP Rumble Seat. You can't make these characters up. It's like a parody of itself. That's right, it is. Trump has gone above and beyond, hasn't he? And Hero May says, I swear, we're living in Marvel DC movie. Yeah. Corruption everywhere. I wonder if the guy mumbles as well, like Dick Tracy. Anyway, Epstein Island says, imagine Trump having people arrested for touching the rancid water of his reflection pool. Trump is so stupid he can't even paint a pool. Yeah. I'm just waiting for the picture of him on his hands and knees, staring into it like Narcissist, right? Or what? Narcissist. I don't know. What was the original name of the Greek? Narcissus. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Maxalva says, you compromise your morals before that other guy. That is how you win, says Satan Yahoo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you hit them before they hit you. If you even think that they're going to do something to you, you kill them and their kids, all of them. Drive them out. We can't tolerate any possible threat to us. And that's really what Lance was talking about last week when we were talking about the prisoner's dilemma. You know, that was a kind of a war game that started with the Rand Corporation, and it was based on, what do we do with a nuclear war? We've got missiles, they've got missiles. If we fire first, then maybe we can wipe them out. So what are we waiting for, right? And so that was the basis of this idea of the prisoner dilemma. Are you going to be nice or are you going to be evil? What happens if one person is nice, the other person is evil, or if they're both nice or whatever, they split different ways? And so they've done a lot of study of that. And it really does come about preemptive strikes. Who's going to be evil? Who is going to try to cooperate with other people? And as a matter of fact, if you both cooperate, you get a better result. We know that in life. So it is pragmatic. It's not just moral. And that was the point the Rand Corporation was saying. They said, this is not necessarily about Christianity and turning the other cheek. But in a sense it is. The people who were Christians who organized America and in general Western civilization along the principles that Christ laid out, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, but at the same time, when somebody acts as an evil actor, we're told the government does not bear the sword in vain. A legitimate government is there as God's instrument of justice in this life, because there will be eventually justice one way or the other. Even if there's not any justice in this life, there will be justice eventually. And the eventual is eternal. It's not the short period of time that we live on this earth. Another comment here from Big Brit is back again. Says, Starmer has resigned, so some goodish news. There's plenty more clones to take his place. I don't think they've just changed the person up front to try to buy a little bit more time, because the policies are not going to change. I really don't think they will.
It's like when they replace Trudeau with Carney. It's just a little show to pretend that they care about the will of the people.
It's a carny show. Carny hustler. So anyway, the headline was, you could have been the greatest president of all of Israel, perhaps, but you failed. Israel's most widely distributed paper. You failed by signing a surrender agreement with a murderous and cruel terror regime. And here he's talking about Iran. He's not talking about Israel, but the same thing could apply to Israel. It is a murderous and cruel terrorist regime. You should support us instead. 2 weeks ago, someone in your circle made sure to leak the sharp conversation that you had with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And I emphasize that full title. His name is not Bibi. He is the elected Prime Minister of the independent sovereign state of Israel. And you need to respect him, Trump. This is what this guy is lecturing him. This is Miriam Adelson's paper. And I'm trying and failing to understand what caused this absurd change in direction. Yeah, this guy can't really understand it. You know, the oil tanks are emptying out, and we're going into, all the economies around the world are going down, but they don't care because they're singularly fixated on their end goal of greater Israel. And they don't care who they've got to kill. They don't care how many countries they have to destroy. They don't care if they push the entire world into a global depression. He just can't understand that. And he really doesn't care. You know, the money just keeps coming from Washington somehow to Israel. So again, this is a failure from the outset. Israel is content to burn down the entire world in order to satisfy their greed for land. And again, that is the only thing in the Bible that they agree with. They think they get the land. You know, Jesus even gave us a parable about that. You know, he talked about the vineyard owner and how he had these people who were working on his vineyard, and they were evil, and they killed some of the stewards that he had there, meaning the prophets that were sent. The land was never given to Israel. It was on a leasehold basis. And God said from the very beginning, if you don't follow me, I'll throw you off, right? And so here you have in this parable that Jesus has, he says, yeah, these people there, they're killing the supervisors that he sends in, basically, to paraphrase. And he goes, so then he thinks, well, I'll send in my own son, and they won't do that. Then they kill his own son. And he makes it clear that what he's talking about is Israel, and how it has killed the prophets, and how it would kill him, God's son, and how God would take these people who were the tenants on his land, and he would deal with them. So you have Sheldon Adelson, the husband of Miriam Adelson, made a huge fortune in the casinos, of course, again, stealing from millions of people. But he did it even better than Trump. Trump can't even steal competently, as we see in Iran as well. So he is the junior con man to the more successful casino owner and thief. In December, Miriam, his widow, said during Hanukkah event, and we reported that she would give Trump another $250 million if he'd run for a third term, because who cares about that Constitution in the United States? They don't care anything at all about it. The idea of, you know, free speech, free exercise religion, they have nothing but contempt for that. So why would they care about any other part of the Constitution? Well, Mark Levin, before he flew to Israel in order to put more pressure on Trump, he did a 17-minute Fox News rant. Stop trashing and smearing and bullying Israel. So I edited this to spare you 17 minutes of listening to this guy. Here's basically what he said. He starts out by pointing out that he thinks we won the war. So why is he so angry if we won the war?
Its Navy and Air Force are mostly destroyed.
Yeah, we've heard that.
Its radar mostly destroyed. Its ground-to-air defense systems mostly destroyed.
So then why are they still in the fight?
The military operation worked. One of the reasons the Arabs were lobbying us to end this war was because of the ballistic missile and drone damage that was being done to its oil capacity, its infrastructure.
So he didn't win.
Very efficient, assembly line efficient. We needed about another 2 weeks to finish hitting the remaining targets on the Pentagon's list. We stopped.
Oh, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
To end the war.
Yeah, 2 weeks to end the war. It was always 2 weeks before they're going to have a nuclear bomb. And now Levin is telling us 2 weeks left to win the war. These guys have got to come up with some new lies. These recycled reruns are getting kind of tiresome, aren't they?
Communists used to use 5-year plans. I guess that's inflation for you. They've shrunk that to 2 weeks.
Yeah, we were 2 weeks away from winning, and they snatched this out. If he thinks that we won, then Mark Levin needs to look up what Pyrrhic victory means. Yeah, you can sink the navy of 7 ships, but if you can't control the missiles and the drones, you haven't won a thing. If they can still reach your country, if they have used these missiles and drones to take out the missile defense systems, if they've used these missiles and drones to not only threaten and attack the Gulf neighbors in retaliation, but if they can also retaliate against U.S. military bases and make them something of an anachronism, you haven't won. Nothing at all has been won. But of course, Mark Levin goes full Orwell, telling us yet again that war is peace.
Those who dare to point out these problems are warmongers or support forever wars. The warmongers are the isolationists.
That's us, right?
And the appeasers. This is what happens when you're making deals as opposed to destroying a regime.
Yeah, you can't make deals. You got to destroy this regime. You got to destroy that country. You got to destroy that civilization. And anybody who says otherwise is pushing war, because war is peace. You understand that? Yeah, full Orwellian. He starts out saying, if people think they can bully this little country, they got another thing coming. Yeah. Which little country would that be? Would that be the little countries that Israel is bullying? Lebanon? Gaza? You know, I find it interesting that right now, at this moment, you have asymmetric technology on the battlefield. These cheap drones and other things like that are neutralizing and equalizing some very expensive weapon systems, like tanks that cost $10 million or more a piece. We saw it in Ukraine. We're seeing it again. This time it is coming after the IDF that has invaded Lebanon yet again. Here's what it looks like from the point of view of the drone operator as they zero in on a tank. This attack killed 4 IDF people. As a matter of fact, the guy who was the tank commander had just replaced his superior officer who had been, I don't remember if he was wounded or killed in a previous tank attack. Yeah, this is what it looks like. So they fly these drones from their perspective. They pause the video there to show you the target. They highlight it there. That's the tank that they see. Fly it right into that tank. Millions of dollars for some of these tanks, tens of millions for some of the Abrams and things like that. Killed everybody inside that tank with a cheap drone operated remote control. Isn't it interesting, the asymmetry that is involved in that? And yet at the same time, while this is happening, while we see that the foreign wars are being reset with asymmetric technology, cheap technology, neutralizing very expensive weapon systems, domestically, what we're seeing is the technology is empowering the tyrants who are using this against us at the same time. It's something that I think is going to eventually push us towards revolution. Now, they may, with their expensive weapon systems, come up with a way to neutralize this asymmetry. But we've seen this type of thing happening for quite some time, whether you're looking at the roadside bombs during Iraq and that type of thing. There is something about asymmetric warfare. I mean, going back to the American Revolution, people at Concord and Lexington sniping at the British as they were going back with what they had seized at Concord and Lexington. And that kind of asymmetric warfare, I think, is always going to be an issue. This technology has made it even more so right now at this point in time. But anyway, he talks about, there's a symmetry between our militaries and defeating this enemy. It is a fantastic marriage, says Mark Levin. Well, I think we need a divorce from Israel. We need a divorce from these pathological liars and killers who are dragging us into one war after another and then demanding that we can't get out, right? You see this from Mark Levin, you see it from Lindsey Graham. You can't get out of this war without having Congress weigh in on it, but they don't want Congress to weigh in on the declaration of war, as the Constitution says. Yes, Lance?
Yeah, and I don't remember Congress declaring America married to Israel. When did that happen? Where in the Constitution does it say that Israel is America's spouse? And
well, we are betrothed right now because they want to merge the militaries. They want to merge the intelligence agencies. As a matter of fact, Israel will be the husband of the marriage because this is not a bi-directional agreement in terms of intelligence. All intelligence that we collect will go to Israel. They don't have to give us anything. So it is a one-way street, absolutely. So he goes on to say, talking about Iran, but he could also be talking about America. He says its currency has no value. It's got massive inflation. They can't pay their military. And we've got a debt that is nearly the size of the Pentagon budget itself. Once we start having to pay off this debt, interest rates go up a little bit higher, and they continue to pile it on. To give away money to Israel and many other countries, we're now at $40 trillion, and so the interest on the debt is roughly equivalent to what the entire Pentagon budget is. How long do we go before we have trouble paying our military? He said it's begging for economic relief. It's begging for a deal. So is that Iran or is that the American people begging for relief, begging for a deal? And Mark Levin, contemptuous of that, degrading people who want peace, calling us the warmongers. None of this would have occurred without the leadership of our president. And the military operation was spectacular, he says. Yeah, it was spectacularly expensive and a spectacular failure. We've shown the limits of what you can get when you just throw money at a defense budget. So he says, Israel has spent 47 years, or not Israel, Iran has spent 47 years killing Americans. As I've said before, we've got to 86 this 47 lie. Our history with Iran goes back 73 years to 1953 when we overthrew their election and put in a king with a ruthless secret police. Now, he was overthrown by an Ayatollah who's got his own ruthless secret police. But the more things change, the more they remain the same, right? So 47 years, Israel has been betraying the U.S. and sending our military to die for them for much longer than that, quite frankly. As we had the 59th anniversary of the USS Liberty, we had all of this engagement, our betrothal to the U.S., to the IDF military and the IDF intelligence agencies. When the Iranian regime was attacking us during the Battle of Iraq, he said, well, we would have never been drug into Iraq if it wasn't for the lies and the pushes coming from Netanyahu, piggybacked on the lies of 9/11. Were they involved in that? Many people think they were. I'm inclined to think so as well. And so how did we get into this war with Iraq? Remember the lies about weapons of mass destruction? They didn't just come from Gina Haspel. They also came from Netanyahu as well. Let's never forget that. So Levin goes on, he says, we needed about another 2 weeks to finish. Again, always the 2-week thing. And then he talks about Hezbollah. Hezbollah is occupying Lebanon. Well, here's the truth that Levin and the Zionists don't want you to understand. Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. Hezbollah did not exist. Hezbollah was put together as a response to that Israeli invasion. They basically created their own enemy, a stupid policy that they did. So they were formed to fight the Israeli occupation. Hezbollah was formed by a lot of Shia militia and others that were there who had a religious connection to Iran. Iran is Shia, Iraq was Sunni, Saudi Arabia is Wahhabi. And so they put this together, but they also worked with some of the Christians that were there. The problem is that the Christians are starting to view them as perhaps because the Israelis are using them as a justification. I'm not convinced that the Israelis would not be invading and attacking Lebanon if there wasn't any Hezbollah, because they attacked and invaded Lebanon before there was a Hezbollah. And so many of the Christians are saying, let's get rid of them. It's a provocation to Israel. I don't think Israel needs a provocation. So he says, they're tormenting and killing and abusing Christians in Lebanon. Well, it's not clear, but Israel definitely is tormenting, killing, and abusing Christians in Lebanon. Most likely, their Christians are getting it from both sides, That's what we're seeing as we see the Muslim immigration. We have the radical, crazy Muslims who want to kill us, and we have the radical, crazy Israelis who want to kill us and to start wars as well. So he says, we were negotiating directly with the Iranian terrorist regime. A terrorist regime. Yeah, we fund a terrorist regime, don't we? Israel. Israel was born out of terrorism. If you go back and you look at Menachem Begin, he was the one who blew up the Royal David Hotel, I think it was called, during British occupation. He began by, the Israelis were some of the first ones to do modern terrorism. That was the birth of that regime. I think it's even more significant than the Balfour Declaration, was the terrorist tactics of people like Menachem Begin. This MOU, he said, was digitally signed the Sunday before we, the people, had any opportunity to see it. Again, where was the MOU to start the war, Levin? You and Lindsey Graham never talk about that, do you? He says, we can talk about reparations, but the victor, Iran, should be paying us for the damage they did to our bases and the cost that we had to occur. Yeah, they should pay us for our act of aggression against them. That's this twisted logic of hate. Why would we do it to Lebanon and the Lebanese people? He supposedly cares about the Lebanese people, then call off Israel. Call off the IDF. He said, Israel has a right to defend itself, and we have a right to defend ourselves without you telling us how to do it. But nobody else has a right to defend themselves. And Americans don't have a right to peace. Americans don't have a right to free speech if we criticize Israel. We don't have a right to the free exercise of religion either, according to these people. He says, why would we, he says, we have committed to fully remove the blockade within 30 days. Why would we agree to abandon that kind of leverage? You see, it's not just that newspaper op-ed piece. It's also Mark Levin. It's all these Zionists who want war forever. They don't understand or care what is happening with oil. It truly is amazing. Why would we do it, Mark Levin? Well, we would do it because we're trying to head off a global economic depression. That's for starters. And so then he gets very upset about the toll thing. He looks at it and he goes, same comment that I made last week. He says, well, I'm a lawyer. That means that I can figure this stuff out, right? He says, we got a little bit more clarity. What it says is for 60 days, there won't be any tolls. I pointed that out. I said, so then what happens after 60 days? There will be tolls because it even says in the document that Oman and Iran will take a look at the tolls. Now, why would they do that? Trump has poured scorn on that idea from the very beginning, saying they can't put tolls on an international waterway. Well, stop and think about it. There are other places where that has been done. This is a very narrow strait. It's only 21 miles across. We have extended our territory 200 miles into the ocean. We say that that is U.S. territory. How does that work? We can claim 200 miles into the ocean, but they can't claim 10 miles for each of these two countries? How does the U.S., now Trump says, I'm going to charge tolls. Well, how does the U.S. have any claim to do that? We don't have any territory that's contiguous to that. We're across the world. How in the world could that be justified? Only in the sense that Trump wants to shut down commerce, I think. So he goes on, in addition to all of his war's peace nonsense, where he says the warmongers are the isolationists, the pacifists, and the appeasers. Well, I'm not a pacifist. I'm not an appeaser. I am an isolationist. I don't think we should be involved with Israel. I don't think we should have entangling alliances. So he says, they want to hide while they shoot at us. That is not American. Well, I'll tell you what is not American. this whole thing of shooting first is not American. It is an Israeli Jewish ethic. We don't embrace that. We should not embrace it. We do now. And bottom line is they never shot at Americans. They're not shooting at us. We attacked them in a war of aggression. When they didn't attack us, that's what makes this whole thing so unjust on our part. Anyway, he said, the Khomeini people, he says, they exist for the end days, for the catastrophic destruction of civilization, starting with Israel, then the United States, then the entire world and all of humanity. You know, this really is the quote-unquote justification for the Zionist theology as well. Oh, it's the end of the day, end days, right? It's the end of the world. And we need to wipe everything out. And you have the people who are pushing this, Christians even, theologically, they're reveling in the fact they think it's the end of days. I'm going to get helicoptered out of here. I don't have to die. He says this is a death cult. I would say the same thing is true of Israel. We got two death cults that we're dealing with here. I say we get out and let them deal with each other. It's like watching Iran and Iraq fight. Just stand back, get some popcorn, and let it happen. Let it take its course. I feel that way about Israel and Iran as well. And so when you look at what Mark Levin is doing, he's then flying after his screed on Fox News. He flies off to Israel Netanyahu's trying to leverage Levin to trash Trump's Iran deal. And apparently it worked. This is the headline from Information Liberation. It says, Mark Levin told his audience on Friday that he's taking a week-long trip to Israel. As a joke before he left, he says, I'm going to meet with Mossad, the IDF, and all the top government officials to share information. Should I joke, Mr. Producer, or will everybody go nuts? Well, the reality is that is exactly what the guy is doing. And many people pointed out, I think it's Glenn Greenwald pointed out, that says it's beyond clear that Mark Levin should file as an Israeli agent under FARA, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, and he should be prosecuted if he does not. He is clearly the agent of a foreign government. Netanyahu personally thanked Levin. He said, Mark Levin is more than a friend. He is a guardian of Israel. Not of America, folks. Mark Levin is not a guardian of liberty. He's not of our liberty. He's not a guardian of the Constitution either. He has pushed for a constitutional amendment. Can you imagine what a Zionist and a warmonger like Mark Levin would do to the Constitution, given half a chance? Is he operating as an unregistered agent? Well, I think he is. I agree with that. As a matter of fact, he is a traitor to the United States, just like his friend, Jonathan Pollard, and his other friend, Mike Huckabee. They're all traitors. And so as all part of this, he says, oh, yeah, I'm going to go talk to the IDF and to Mossad. Oh, just kidding. Yeah, yuck, right? He also had this to say when he got to this conference that he's being featured at by Netanyahu.
And yet people keep giving opinions about me that aren't true. I read headlines and I go, did I say that? No, I didn't say that. So I just want to explain, I'm not an agent for the Israeli government.
Yes, you are.
I don't meet with the Israeli government.
You're doing it right now.
I don't conspire with the Israeli government.
Doing it right now.
Believe it or not, I love this country, and I don't need any government to tell me that.
Yeah. He's saying this in Israel, by the way. He loves that country, not our country. And so Trump got the message, and he sabotaged the peace talks over the weekend. He threatened the Iranian officials in Switzerland that they would not make it back to Iran if they close the Strait of Hormuz while Netanyahu is bombing Lebanon. You see, this is a really credible threat, by the way, because they've had a situation once before when they were negotiating, and the Pakistani prime minister, who was, I think it was the prime minister at the time, was somebody from Pakistan who was the moderator, and he said they were very close to the agreement, and they got word that, America was going to ignore that and attack anyway, so he flew to Washington to underscore how close they were to an agreement. Nevertheless, because Israel wanted to attack, Trump went with them. And so as we're doing a negotiation, they attacked the country. And then in a subsequent negotiation, it was told to them that Israel was gunning for the people who were the delegates to the negotiation. They were going to be assassinated while they were negotiating. This is what Israel does. And it's what the U.S. does, unfortunately, now as well. And so when Trump puts out, he says, you close the Strait of Hormuz and you won't have a country. You won't even make it back to your effing country, said Trump. This is the mafia thug, the Don, that is now in charge of America. How do we get to this point? I was done with this guy in 2020. Anyway, U.S.-Iran peace talks then fail. The U.S. delegation, led by J.D. Vance, as a matter of fact, when you look at this, it's kind of interesting to watch this. This is let me go back to this. This is the actual sabotage. Here they are, they're talking. It's the Iranian negotiating. That's the Pakistan guy on the right in the light suit. And you can watch them go over here. The camera's pulling back here. They're in Lucerne. They're talking amongst themselves. They've seen Trump's threats. And now they cut back to J.D. Vance. He doesn't know what's going on. It's like, what's going on? And, there's the guy who is in the light suit. That's the Pakistani prime minister who's trying to broker the deal. And now he's got to tell J.D. Vance they're leaving. Look at the expression on his face. And they walk out. They refuse to do a photo op with J.D. Vance as well. I would do the same thing if I were them, I got to say. Trump deliberately sabotaged this, threatening to destroy their country, threatening to kill them before they could get back to their country.
How are the talks going so far, Mr. Vice President?
How are they going so far? Yeah, they're going, gone. And here's what the Prime Minister of Pakistan is like. Look at the angst on his face. What's going on? This whole thing is crumbling. Yeah, thanks to Trump. He caved to his Zionist masters and the press and politicians and the pundits here in America coming after him because he wanted peace. War is okay. Peace is not okay. The Iranian delegation arrived. They greeted the mediator, Prime Minister from Pakistan. They informed him that they refused to negotiate due to the threats issued by Trump. They didn't meet with Vance. They abruptly left. They refused a photo op. A panicked Sharif, which you just saw there, frantically requested his boss, Field Marshal Munir, to intervene, but he also appeared to be helpless. That's right. The guy's just standing there like, well, now what do we do? So Vance came in to see why they were coming out, and the cameras continued filming. He's like, what's going on here? Well, it's what your boss just did. He just got a memo from Israel about what he needed to do, and he followed through on it. As a matter of fact, Netanyahu doesn't even try to hide it anymore. He lays out what their new strategy is. As Shadow of Ezra pointed out, he has changed Israel's security doctrine to strictly follow the Babylonian Talmud. Kill them first. We initiate. We attack. We surprise. Kill them first.
We changed Israel's security doctrine. We initiate, we attack, we surprise, and we attack those enemies that seek our destruction, that seek to kill us. We attack them before they have a chance to do so. If you know Hebrew, Akam le'orgecha, ashkem le'orgo. Kill them first.
Yeah. Yeah, that is not, that may be the Hebrew language that he's quoting there. It has nothing to do with the Hebrew Bible. It really doesn't. And so, again, is it just doing this preemptively in defense? Well, no, quite frankly. There's a video that is now illegal to share in Israel. Why? Because it is the former Prime Minister, Gallant, who admitted after October the 7th that they had knowingly killed Israelis in order to have their quote-unquote victory. He admitted that Israel killed its own people with the Hannibal Directive on October the 7th. He blamed Hamas. But they used Israeli helicopters, Israeli drones, Israeli tanks to kill Israelis that were there. And again, this is the reality. They don't care who they kill. They got an objective, and for their political goals, they will kill anybody, including their own citizens.
But why is the destruction then? I'm sorry. Why is the destruction? It looks like a cause of our tanks.
This is caused by us.
Fight on them. Yeah, because they were blocked in these houses, and we need to conquer back the whole settlement, and it couldn't be happened without the tanks. Okay.
So how many were here, and then how many survived? How many did you?
No one survived from this house.
All Israelis they killed.
We rescued many, but from this house, 19 people died. Among them, 8 children.
No, wow. So, this is what I've said about this whole argument that they had about what they had to do with Gaza. I said, if you have somebody who's an escaped fugitive, we've had several of these situations when the police are chasing somebody that's just robbed a bank or whatever, and they run into somebody's house, and the police come in and they destroy the house to get that person. What if, and of course, many times people are trying to get compensation for the property damage that's been destroyed. Is that a reasonable thing to do? Is it a reasonable thing because somebody goes into a bank and they take hostages and they say, bring us a car and take us to the airport, or we're going to start killing people in here one by one? So what does the American government typically do with that? Do they pull up a tank and blow up the bank and everybody in it, all the hostages and everybody, just to teach them a lesson? That's what the Israelis do. And that increasingly is how the American government is acting when it comes to war. You don't just kill everybody. As a matter of fact, Trump was criticized by Mark Levin because Trump said, hey, let Syria deal with Hezbollah. They can do it without killing everybody. Israel is very happy about the fact that they got one Hezbollah official after destroying an entire apartment building and all the people in it. This is insane. But this is what they've been doing from the very beginning. Again, this former Israeli Prime Minister Gallant admitted it. He said, well, yeah, everybody, we killed everybody here so that we don't let them get away with it. This is where this is all headed. As a matter of fact, they are proud of their genocide. Look at this.
Government doesn't stutter about you. You can keep dreaming that we will end the war without victory. We are not ashamed to say that we want to see the soldiers of the IDF, the holy heroes of ours, catching Sinwar and his terrorists by their ears and dragging them all across the Gaza Strip on their way to the dungeons of the prison authority. But Ben Gvir's prison authority, not of Bar-Lev or Mikhaili, or in the best case scenario to a coffin. I am personally proud of the ruins of Gaza, and that every baby, even 80 years from now, will tell their grandchildren what the Jews did. Not a dove and not an olive branch, only a sword to cut off Sinwar's head. That's what he will receive from us.
She sounds just like a Muslim terrorist. As a matter of fact, we did the same thing with that Lance did with the Maloney-Trump thing.
I took her talking and gave it to a AI voice cloner and then just had her say the same stuff that she was saying in Hebrew but in English.
And it had the same intonation, the same anger that you hear in the Hebrew version of it, but you can hear it in English instead of reading the subtitles. I think you need to hear that. I think you need to understand that there's not a dime's worth of difference between those Israeli terrorists in the Knesset and the Muslim terrorists. They both want to kill us, and they're both killing Christians in Lebanon and elsewhere. They're both crazy, murderous suicide cults, both of them. And this is what genocide looks like as it travels to Lebanon. Take a look at this. Same thing they did in Gaza. Nothing but dust and rubble. This is destroying everybody and everything. It is a policy, a true policy of genocide. Everybody understands that's what it is. But now you're not supposed to say that, because if you do, that's racist to say that. Why? Because criticism of the Israeli government is supposedly racist because the Israeli government is based on racism. So you have others doubling down. This is Israeli media talking about how much, well, let's see, that's not the one that I've got. Yeah, here it is right here. Saying, I am for war. Now, this one we did not translate. I'll read it for you. I am for the war crimes, says a guy on an Israeli TV program. I don't care if I'm criticized. And honestly, I don't care. I'm unable to sleep if I do not see houses being destroyed in Gaza. More houses, more buildings. I want to see more of them destroyed. I want there to be nothing for them to return to. In the Torah, it says, salt the earth, and they must complain. That is why we cannot have a solution. And that's what war crimes mean to me. He loves it. He loves to do this to Gaza, to Lebanon. They will do it to the entire Middle East. This is why they would like to continue to provoke Iran. Iran can then retaliate to Gulf states, and they can destroy the entire region like that. And then come in and take it over. That is the Greater Israel plan. As a matter of fact, when you look at Jonathan Pollard, the hatred that we see coming out of Israel, they always talk about Jew hatred. Well, Jew hatred, immediately we hear the phrase Jew hatred, we think, that's people who are hating the Jews. What about the Jews who hate the world? People like Jonathan Pollard saying that the people in Gaza need to be moved to Ireland. He said the Irish deserve it. What did they do to you that they deserve it? This is in their own minds. What did Ireland ever do to Jonathan Pollard or to Israel? Nothing. You don't have to do anything to Israel to get their wrath turned toward you. And again, Netanyahu is talking about, he says, I can't understand why everybody hates us.
And let me tell you how anti-Semitism works down the ages. Ever since we lost our country and we became defenseless, we were defenseless not only against physical attack, but against the vilifications that often and always preceded them.
God did that to you.
We were faced in one country with such vilifications, and that led eventually to either one of two things, either exile or massacre. And then we went to another country, and we faced exactly the same thing. After the vituperations and vilifications, that we're poisoning the wells, that we drink the blood of slain children, that we carry vermin. And by the way, these are the exact lies that continued right up to the Nazi Holocaust. Exactly the lies.
That you're poisoning wells? What about destroying entire cities? Because you think that there's one guy that's with Hamas or with the other Palestinian group. You got one guy you want to get. So let's kill everybody in the apartment building. Is that any better than poisoning wells? What about drinking the blood of children? What about spilling the blood of children? What about blowing them to pieces callously, continuing to do that? What about Israeli snipers who shoot children once in the chest and then once in the head, as so many of the volunteer doctors have testified? Dozens of doctors have seen this. Yes, Lance?
And the wells in Gaza may not be poisoned because they are planning on living there, but they were using water as a weapon against the people. Water and food famously were being used to corral people into kill zones.
That's right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, there have been some people who have opposed Netanyahu who are Jewish and says, you continue down this path, they're going to throw us out of Israel because people are disgusted with what we see there. So again, it's a final comment here. One person says, can somebody explain to me why the U.S. negotiating team is the vice president and two unelected Jewish real estate brokers? Jared Kushner and Witkoff. Yeah, I think we know why they're real estate brokers that are there, because this is all really about Jewish real estate that they think that they own. So Trump has threatened that the U.S. will charge toll fees in Hormuz if Iran doesn't execute a peace deal. Another day, another threat, whether it's true or not. Again, tacos and nachos. Not a chance Hormuz opens, and Trump always changes his mind. He chickens out. Trump has threatened the U.S. could charge toll fees to ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz if Iran doesn't execute a peace deal within 60 days. Again, I pointed out this before. He has absolutely no basis to do that. He has said, we're kind of acting like pirates. Exactly like pirates. Exactly like the Barbary pirates who did that, which is the first time that America used troops. Jefferson sent in troops because they were extracting tolls and people on the Barbary coast. And so he sent in the Marines to the shores of Tripoli, as the song goes. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Making sense common again. You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Whether you're feeling like the blues or bluegrass, APS Radio has you covered. Check out a wide variety of channels on our app at apsradio.com.
In July of 1896, exactly 130 years ago, I warned this great nation of the government's plan to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold. Of course, that was before they started to bleed us dry with the death of 1,000 fiat paper cuts. But after you bought every single commemorative David Knight Show coin in gold color, the podcast's gold reserves are depleted. They issued 100 numbered gold-colored coins and declared the mint closed. The people cried out, "Free silver!" Well, the likes of J.P. Morgan can't stop this all-new commemorative coin. Now in silver color, while supplies last, this commemorative coin does not contain precious metal, but does keep the show on the air. Equal to the gold color, this limited run is numbered 1 to 100. Get yours today at thedavidknightshow.com. Hurry, because supplies are disappearing quicker than the purchasing power of the dollar.
Yeah, and we got a comment question here. The Real Octospook asks, how many ounces of silver are in the silver coin? 0. I want to make that perfectly clear. I don't want to we did that as a joke because the original one was gold and this one is silver colored. They're gold colored and silver colored, but they're commemorative coins.
At the anniversary of the Cross of Gold thing and the bimetallic standard debate.
That's right. Yeah. So, a little bit of history that's there. If you want real gold, you need to go to davidknight.gold. That'll take you to Tony Ardman, and you can get real gold, real silver, and you won't get ripped off by commemorative coins that they sell, pretending that they have gold and silver in them. Through these Fox News hosts and things like that. But no, this is simply a commemorative coin. It is to help the show and a souvenir for you as well in case you missed out on the first 100. And thank you to Ryan for putting these together and sending them to us. It's taken us a while to get this together and get our act together on the website and a commercial to explain to people what's going on with it. But I just want to be clear about that. It is a commemorative coin. It is simply decoration. It is simply gold and silver colored. There's no real gold or silver in it. AP Rumble Seat says, and these drones are what's being beta tested to bring to a surveillance grid near you. If you think this will stay in war zones and not be brought against global populations, think again. That's right. Madison warned us. He said the tools of defense abroad will become instruments of tyranny at home. And we've already seen this played out in terms of moving the Overton window and showing people how this will operate. You know, the drones that will be flying around all the time doing surveillance, doing biometric identification of your face, doing surveillance of how you walk, because you probably won't have a car. You know, this cancer of these flock cameras is expanding very, very rapidly. I expect it to really expand quickly in Tennessee. We got some work to do here. Maybe we should start organizing real soon and start opposing these flock cameras before martial law gets invoked by Blackburn when she becomes governor. But
of course, it'll all be powered by AI models, so they can scale it infinitely. It won't just be explosive kamikaze kill you drones. There'll be plenty of spy drones constantly watching you to report back. There'll probably be non-lethal restraining drones and police force drones.
Yeah, do what we say or we hit you with an electric shock. I am constantly amazed at the power of AI to restore photographs. That's how I'm using it predominantly. We'll go back and we'll take I've started going down memory lane with some old photographs that we have that are 50 or so years old because Karen and I had our first date in 74. So we're looking at 52 years. Anniversary has already passed this year. So we got a lot of old pictures that have faded that look really bad to start with, many of them. You know, if you got a shaky camera or you had your shutter speed too low and you get a blurry shot, you can go in and tell it to remove the motion blur, and it does a great job of doing that. If it's somebody's face, it may not capture the true facial expression and facial details, but sometimes it does, even with that. But if it is something like a picture of an ornate piece of furniture on the wall, which we saw when we went to England and some of the museums that were there, it was able to restore that perfectly. I was truly amazed at that. And to restore the color and everything, just with the commands, make the color right, and it does it, which would be a much more complicated process if you're using Photoshop to do it. Although when I did it in Photoshop in the past, I had pretty much a routine that I did with it. It wasn't really too much worse. But the ability to go through and to find detail and to pull it out and you look at that, I didn't see that. And you go back and look at the original, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's there. I can see it now. But so, yeah, its ability to be able to suss you out wherever you are, to be able to identify you, to be able to create a database, just like Flock is already doing. They look at the idiosyncrasies of your car. Does it have a dent? Does it have a bumper sticker? Does it have anything else that we can identify besides even the license plate reader? And so this is what we're looking at. It really, truly is going to be horrific. And this is why I say we need to not just simply focus on the data centers. You look at that and say, all right, that's our first line of defense. Try to stop them from building these data centers, and there's a really good reason to do that. Because they're running these generators. They've got to have uptime power all the time. This is one of the problems that the people are complaining about. The noise from these backup generators is just deafening to the people who live in the communities. And that's just a part of it. The massive increase in the power bills, the massive increase in water costs, all of these different things are happening. So there's a reason to oppose this, but don't think that you're going to be able to stop it on that basis. They'll find a way to get around that, or they'll just ignore your push on that. The key thing is we've got to restore in the rule of law. We've got to restore the rule of law. We've got to restore respect for individual liberties and rights that the founders of this country and our original leaders had. We don't have any leaders that have that kind of respect. I can't think of anybody except for Thomas Massey, and they've just kicked him out. Yes.
Because this is a trespass. As much as the likes of Teal want to pretend that this is some libertarian thing, they are stealing the community's water. They are trespassing on their neighbors in terms of noise and trespassing in terms of light, which are both property rights that you have. That's right. Can't.
Well, for the longest time, libertarians have pushed back against the regulations coming out of the federal government and the EPA saying, let's not have the government dictating what this is. Let's treat pollution as a trespass, because it is. And so, we're not doing that. This is not a libertarian approach. A libertarian approach would be to treat it as a trespass, just like Lance was saying. But when we look at the bigger picture, we have to restore protections against government acting like a police surveillance state. If we don't do that, they're going to find a way to power the data that is there. They're going to, they may find a way to recycle the water so that doesn't become an issue. They may just run roughshod over everybody's rights, or they may come up with technology to improve this. So we have to tackle it at the higher level. We have to understand that what they're really after with all this stuff is a way to continually monitor and audit everything that we do, to turn us into a permission-based social credit society, just like China has done, and to make everything by permission and to follow everything that we do. That is the key issue. That's what needs to be addressed.
I'd say it's more like what China is currently doing, because it's going to get worse than it currently is in China even.
That's right. That's right. And Epstein Island says, thank Trump for pardoning Jonathan Pollard, the egg-shaped creep. Well, he is an egg-shaped creep, but I think the pardon actually, he removed some of the penalties that were there, and he was flown to Israel during the end of Trump's administration, but that actually began before that, and I think he had pretty much gotten to the point where he'd been released, but he couldn't travel, and I think that they made that possible. I'm all for getting that creep out of the country as far as I'm concerned. So thanks for getting him out of the country. But, when we look at this, there was actually an article from Zero Hedge saying, bad news overload. News avoidance is on the rise. How do we deal with bad news? Do we just try to run away from it? Are we going to whistle in the graveyard? The ultimate bad news, as Zero Hedge points out, they said, in the end, you don't have a hedge, right? All the hedges go to zero in the end because we all die, right? So what is it about our life? Is it, can we avoid bad news? No, it's going to come one way or the other. We need to know what the bad news is so we can try to prepare for it, perhaps. But I think it's time for some good news here. As a matter of fact, when you look at the people that we see over and over again, whether you're talking about Richard Dawkins or some of these other people who are looking at what is happening to society because they are tied up in the secular world, in the world that is going to last only for a second, not even a second compared to eternity, they get very upset about the things that happen because they don't have any other out for it. And when you look at even people like the atheist Bill Maher, he's now become a Bible-thumping Zionist.
I would submit that Israel did not steal anybody's land. This is another thing I've heard the last couple of weeks, words like occupiers and colonizers and apartheid, which I don't think people understand the history there. The Jews have been in that area of the world since about 1200 BC, way before the first Muslim or Arab walked the earth. 1,000 years before. I mean, Jerusalem was their capital. Okay, so if it's just about who got there first, it's not even close.
How did you wind up with the Arabs who were antithetical to the Jews? Was it because Abraham decided that he was going to take God's promise into his own hands? Is that how that happened? Is that how Ishmael, the father of the Arabs, was born? Is that what these people are doing? Even if they're right and they're not about the land being given to Israel, they were tenants. And God promised that if they didn't follow him, they'd be thrown out. And they were, multiple times. They were thrown into captivity a couple of times before they killed God's son. And then they were thrown out. More people are actively trying to avoid news or at least limit their exposure to it. And so we have to understand that politics and current events are all downstream from what we think about God. And here's a good example of this. Mike Huckster-Jew, instead of Huckabee, I guess we could call him that. He's not an ambassador for America, and he's not an ambassador for Christ. Listen to him.
He went off on some trails that I was still to this day scratching my head over, like that Bibi Netanyahu is not really Jewish. And I'm thinking, boy, that would be news to him and his entire family for generations back. Are things like that Jews should have a DNA test in order to live in Israel. And I'm thinking, okay, what does that mean? Should Americans have a DNA test to prove that somehow...
No, we don't make being an American about a race.
Where he was going with that?
They do. Yeah, they do. And why are they afraid of that? I wonder. Well,
yeah,
the reality...
a sort of meme that you can't talk to liberals because so much of the liberal argument is just willfully misinterpreting what you're saying. And that's exactly what we're seeing from Huckabee.
That's right.
He knows that's not what they're trying to imply, but he's willfully misinterpreting it to create a straw man.
That's right. They lost all the genealogies when the temple was destroyed. They changed the way citizenship was handed down. They don't have a paper trail. They avoid, like the plague, having a DNA test. And so it is a group that they have voluntarily joined, and yet they pretend that it is some kind of a master race. But the reality is that if Mike Huckabee really loved the Jews as much as he claims to love the Jews, if he loved Christ at all, if he believed Christ at all, he would share the gospel with them. That's the good news. You want to talk about bad news overload? Well, what about the good news of Christ? He doesn't want to tell them about that. And, when everybody looks at this and we look at the ultimate bad news of death, as Jesus said to the Jews in his day, he said, you search the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life. But they testify of me. You notice he didn't say they testify of Israel and its mission to own this piece of land. No, that's not what the Bible is about. And that's what people like Mike Huckabee and the dispensationalists are perverting. They're switching out they're switching Israel and replacing Jesus with Israel. And you've had some of the old rabbis would do that as well. In Isaiah, when it would talk about my servant, sometimes it was talking about Israel, and sometimes it would complain about their disobedience and their rebellion. But they talked about his sinless servant. And it talked about his sinless servant who would die for many, for all of the nations. And so when you present this to Jewish people, when you read them Isaiah, they don't even read the scriptures, most of them. They're reading commentary from rabbis. That's how they get into this Babylonian Talmud, where we kill them first. They don't read the Bible. They don't study the Bible. There's a huge difference between the Jewish rabbinical religion and what was given to them by Moses. And it is not just a rejection of Jesus. It is a rejection of the entire Old Testament. We saw that with Ben Shapiro as well. Just like Bill Maher. Bill Maher rejects everything about the Bible except we get that land. And Ben Shapiro does the same thing when asked by Joe Rogan. So did Moses part the Red Sea? There's no, it was a wind. But we do get that land that's on the other side of it. And so this is a group called Jews for Jesus. And they, unlike Mike Huckabee, first of all, believe in Christ. Secondly, they have concern for Jews and they want to give them the good news.
But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities, and the punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. Is this from the Hebrew scriptures or from the New Testament?
I think this is from New Testament.
מאיפה אתה חושב שזה? מהתנ"ך או מהברית החדשה? זה לא מהתנ"ך. זה לא מהתנ"ך?
That's from he's smitten by God. New Testament.
New Testament. זה מהברית החדשה או מהתנ"ך? מהברית החדשה.
The book you guys have written.
New stuff, you wrote it down.
What does it sound like?
Jesus.
I'm assuming that the text is referring to Jesus.
Would you be surprised if I told you this is Isaiah, the Hebrew Bible?
I didn't see anything like that yet.
That's 700 years before Jesus.
Yeah.
Interesting, yeah.
זה מישעיהו נ"ג.
גם זה?
הכל.
What do you think that it's about?
That's Mashiach, that he suffers for the whole world.
Well, what do you think about Christians who think that it's describing Jesus?
I'm not involved with Christians. I have my Torah and that's it. I don't look in other places.
All right, let's do one more.
For unto us a child is born.
And unto us a son is given. And the
Prince of Peace.
I'm gonna go New Testament again and Jesus again. I don't know why. I'm just gonna go for it.
Might be from the New Testament. I'm almost sure it's the Nusaf.
So a son would be born?
Not Hashem don't have no son.
Well, that's what you got to ask. This is, again, is this New Testament?
Hashem don't have no son. I don't believe on that.
You don't believe in this text? No.
Now my head is all over the place.
Well, let me tell you, this text as well is Isaiah. This is Isaiah. We don't believe that God had no child.
For unto us a child is born, for unto us a son is given, and his name shall be called Mighty God, Everlasting Father. So it's from Isaiah 9:6.
From Isaiah? Anybody see God? He dies.
Jacob, when he was walking, remember the place? It's called Peniel.
Yeah.
He called the place Peniel because you remember he says, I saw the face of God and I didn't die.
הפסוקים האלה מהברית החדשה או מהתנ"ך?
מהתנ"ך.
אז איך זה הולך על יהושע?
כי הוא משלים את הנבואות מהתנ"ך.
הוא היה בזמן התנ"ך.
נכון.
He fulfills the prophecies he's talking
על משיח שאמור להגיע. אז אנחנו רואים אותו מתגשם בזה. אתה יודע, ברגע שבית המקדש השני נשבר, אנחנו צריכים פתרון לכל הקורבנות.
The second temple was destroyed. We need a solution to sacrifices.
פתרונות יעשה הקדוש ברוך הוא.
Well, the Holy One, bless it. It's going too quickly. I can't read it.
קראת פעם את הברית החדשה?
But you get the idea.
Testament?
What is happening
I
with
never
this.
touched it. I have nothing against it.
Yeah.
But I never touched it.
Yeah. If all the passages that talk about Messiah pointed to Jesus.
His mind is closed.
Keep it with me because no.
In the New Testament, almost everything is commentary on the Torah, on the Tanakh.
Everything that comes from not holy sources, I'm not allowed to read.
Do you think that something bad would happen if you read it?
If it doesn't bring me any good, it's already not a reason to read it.
Have you ever read ever the New Testament?
No, never.
לא, אף פעם לא ראיתי את הספר.
Is that something that you'd be curious to read ever? In Hebrew or in English?
Oh, I don't know, man.
Who is this talking about? Jesus. Where is this from? New Testament. Who is this talking about? Jesus. Where is it from? New Testament. Then when I told them that it's Old Testament, no, it's not Jesus. right? That is a veil. And that is what our brothers and sisters have on them right now.
Yeah, and it's not us. It's not us saying that. The Tanakh says that explicitly in Isaiah 6. It talks about God addressing Isaiah and talking to a people that can see but not perceive, can hear but aren't listening. We interviewed someone in New York, and he was asked if all the proof was there that Jesus was the Messiah, would you believe? He said, no, I can't. And what that says is that the heart is hard and stubborn. I would just say to anybody out there watching this, if you're Jewish especially, to open up the Tanakh, open up the Old Testament. And I'm not even telling you to open up the New Testament. And look at passages like Isaiah 52:13 through Isaiah 53:12. Look at Isaiah 9:6. Look at Micah 5:2, Psalm 22. Look at Zechariah 12:10. Look at, what was the other one you mentioned?
Jeremiah 31:31.
The New Covenant. Look at Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34. And tell us what you think. Tell us what you see. Go into those passages and let us know what you think down in the comments.
How can Jesus not be the Messiah? That needs to be the question.
Right.
Guys, if you like this type of content, don't forget to leave a like.
And again, that is the kind of question that should be asked to the people who constantly replace Jesus with Israel. No, the scriptures testify of him. So much so, as a matter of fact, that this was one of the, well, no, you guys added that. You changed Isaiah. You know, that is something that we had heard from Jewish rabbis in the past. Then they found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And it showed that it had not changed since 700 years before Christ. So it had not changed whatsoever. But what we're seeing here from these people that are Jewish, it's the same kind of closed mind that Michael Glenn was talking about in terms of scientists and scientism. People have chosen who they are going to serve, and they shut their eyes to the evidence that comes at any other point. No, we don't want to run away from something that we think might be bad news. We want to look at it. We want to have the courage to look at that. We want to have the courage to change our convictions if we're wrong. And when people don't do that because they are they're dedicated to scientism or they're dedicated to Judaism, that is a big problem. You know, John MacArthur went on with Ben Shapiro, and he tried to explain to him Isaiah 53. Because I've seen many people who are Jewish who became Christians, and for most of them, that is, for an honest person, that's really when the scales come off when you look at that. And yet, Ben Shapiro doesn't care what the Bible says. Again, he doesn't believe that Moses parted the Red Sea. And so he said he just refers always to these commentators from the Middle Ages, people like Maimonides and others like that. So again, selective news avoidance, right? Whether you're talking about the important news or whether you're talking about the secular news, as Reuters Institute calls it, because significantly more widespread across all markets in recent years. And a lot of people are doing that with the good news as well. As a matter of fact, I want to play this for you in a nutshell. Here's a good example of why this news is so good in a very brief explanation. This is Alistair Begg.
So to go to the old Fort Lauderdale question, if you were to die tonight and you were getting entry into heaven, what would you say? If you answer that, and if I answer it in the first person, we've immediately gone wrong. Because I believed, because I have faith, because I am this, because I am continuing. Loved ones, the only proper answer is in the third person, because he. Think about the thief on the cross. And what an immense, I can't wait to find that fellow one day to ask him, how did that shake out for you? Because you were cussing the guy out with your friend. You'd never been in a Bible study. You never got baptized. You didn't know a thing about church membership. And yet you made it. You made it. How did you make it? That's what the angel must have said, like, what are you doing here? Well, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, because I don't know. Well, excuse me, let me get my supervisor. They go get the supervisor ranger. So we're just a few questions for you. First of all, are you clear on the doctrine of justification by faith? The guy said, I never heard of it in my life. And what about, let's just go to the doctrine of Scripture immediately. This guy's just staring. And eventually in frustration, he says, on what basis are you here? And he said, the man on the middle cross said, I can come.
That's right. It's on that basis and that basis alone. People will say, well, I can come because I'm Presbyterian or because I'm Catholic or because I'm this or I'm that or because I'm Jewish, right? As a matter of fact, Michael Bloomberg said, well, if there is a heaven, I'm going straight in because look at all the money that I've given to charities. That's the wrong answer. It's like Monty Python, answer me these three questions. And it gets a question wrong. It's like catapulted into the pit of doom is what I always think of when I see Michael Bloomberg. Is like, yeah, if there's a heaven, I'm going to go straight in. It's like, straight in. But it is, that is the way a lot of people look at it. And I've got a comment here from DG8. Thank you for the tip. He says, David, John Hagee says Jesus did not come to be Messiah to the Jews. Don't believe a thing John Hagee says. He also says he says the Jews don't need Jesus, right? Jesus said, I am the way. No man comes to the Father but by me. And that includes Jewish people as well. But this is what they always do. He said, Hagee also said it, he don't ever witness to a Jew because they all get a second chance. He really must hate the Jews or be funded by Israel. Actually, he rejects God and the Bible. That is how he got to where he is. And, when you look at this attitude that John Hagee has, and again, talking about this second chance, I remember the first time I came across dispensationalism, I heard a guy, commentator, was talking, and he had a lot of good things that he had said in terms of the Bible. I thought, well, it's kind of interesting. I was listening to some tapes of his when I was driving. He was somebody who was on the radio a lot. And he said, we have to understand prophecy because if we don't, same thing will happen to us that happened to the Jews. They missed their opportunity because they didn't realize that it was the time of their visitation. So God went with plan B. It's like, time out. God doesn't have a plan B. If he had a plan B, he wouldn't be God. But he declares the end from the beginning, and he works it out according to the sovereignty of his will. That is God. That is the God of the Bible. So I don't know what God you're talking about when you say that he gave them a second chance. And he did he gave every one of us a second chance, a third chance, a fourth chance, a 70th chance. That chance is called the Lord Jesus Christ. That is the only chance that any of us have. And it's not Christian to tell somebody otherwise, whatever John Hagee calls himself or presents himself to be. This is a guy who worships secular politics of a foreign nation. He brings in Israeli officials. He has the Israeli flag up there behind him on the podium when he preaches. He's not about Christ at all. AP Rumble Seat. They also used thermal tech to map heat from these mega centers. It is horrendous coming out of multiple smokestacks. So much for cow farts. They're destroying the atmosphere for real now. Yeah, when you look at how they completely look the other way when they're talking about all these SpaceX launches, they look the other way when they talk about the data centers. It's like they don't care. If it's something that is vital to them and their control agenda, because they want to become like God. They want to become omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. And they don't care what they have to do. And all this climate MacGuffin was just to tell you to come up with a rationale so that you would be locked down and unable to do anything. It wasn't to get in their way. As soon as they want to do it, it all just disappeared, didn't it? Bin Laden Bernanke won. Says, Marsha Blackburn in Tennessee, Tommy Tuberville in Alabama, my state, are going to do whatever Trump and his Gestapo tell them to do. Whatever Orange Man Jim Jones says. You're absolutely right. And really, that has become pretty much the majority position of all the GOP. If anybody disagrees with Trump, they only do it after they've decided that they're not going to run for office again. And they otherwise will not say anything to oppose him. Max Alva says, now Peter Thiel wants the data center to be loose in the sea, far from our protective hammers. Yeah, that is, again, the more I look at this, the more the Arleck War by Hugo de Garis really resonates. He said he knew where this was all headed. You know, he was somebody, he had blind spots because he was an atheist. He had blind spots. So he thought that if he built a replica of a physical brain, that somehow consciousness would spring into it. No. He doesn't have any understanding of the soul, and most of these transhumanist or AI people don't. But what he did understand was how it was going to be used by people in power. And he said once the general public understands how this is going to be used, they're going to come after the tech people, and they're going to have to run away. Now, he thought that they would leave the planet, and so he called them cosmists, and the people on the planet as Tyrants. And he said there would be gigadeath because they would leverage their superior technology against all of us. We'll see, but it certainly is shaping up that way, isn't it? People understand what this AI is going to do to everyone. I mean, they're getting booed at all the college commencement speeches and all the rest of this stuff. There's a real backlash that is building. And the full effects of AI have not really hit us yet. I mean, this is just something, we can see it coming, but it hasn't really hit yet. Once it hits, it is going to go full-blown into what he called the Artillect War, the artificial intelligence wars. I really believe that. Bin Laden Bernanke one says, one woman in my college class said, I can't watch the news. I'd rather watch Disney movies. Now she has her social media and her other online content to do the same. That's right.
Thing is, I can't watch Disney movies either. Actually, that's worse than the news.
It truly is. It is so sad when you look at it and what it has become. There's no way that you can look at this and think about any innocence that is there. Well,
that's exactly what Disney wants you to do, is don't look at the news, look at our propaganda.
That's right. They want you to follow your heart. That is not a That's not good advice, really. Yeah, you can have some goals and some aspirations, and you should not be afraid to take some risks and to try those things, but follow your heart. As we've been seeing, there's some people, and of course the Bible says the heart is desperately wicked, who can understand it, right? And we certainly do see that with the people who are so hell-bent, and I mean hell-bent, on taking land that they'll do anything to their fellow humans to get that land. Yeah, these people, these Zionists we've been talking about, Mark Levin, Benjamin Netanyahu, they're following their heart, but their heart is desperately wicked, isn't it? And all of our hearts are desperately wicked if we're honest with ourselves to some degree or the other. The Fed has moved to close stablecoin loopholes with new customer IDs and more rules to set up a surveillance and a control state. Again, martial law Blackburn. Federal Reserve proposed a payment stablecoin issuers must maintain customer ID programs. This is all the Know Your Customer rules. They're trying to extend this to crypto and do it very quickly. So it'll be a permitted stablecoin issuers, PPSIs as they call them, will have to collect from each new customer a legal name, a date of birth, or formation. Date of birth or formation. They're talking about corporations, right? But it won't be that long before they're talking about it from the hatcheries, right? What is your date of formation?
You could also use that for AIs when they start giving them companies that they can control, allegedly, that will be under the control of Teal as a hedge against any liability.
Yeah, well, we got Javier Milei already trying to do that down in Argentina. A physical address, and most importantly, a government-issued identification number. Mark of the beast, right? Because that really is what the beast is in Revelation. It is a way of referring to government. And so really, the mark of the beast is the mark of the government. It is the number from the government. So the Federal Reserve's actions are following rulemaking that was set in motion by the Genius Act. That was from Marsha Blackburn. Martial law. Yeah. And so this is, they're rolling out this, she's carrying the water for the police surveillance state big time. Federal Reserve Governor Michael Barr has emerged as the most vocal voice of caution within the regulatory apparatus, even as his colleagues have embraced digital assets with new openness. Well, you're looking at this, and I thought, well, only one has a problem with this. No, the reason he's got a problem with it is he doesn't think it goes far enough. He wants more stringent rules, more anti-money laundering issues that are there. And that's how they always justify it, right? We got to know everything about you because we got to crack down on money laundering for the drug trade. You see how the war on drugs, how it gets its perverse, corrupting tentacles into everything, how it is used to advance the agenda of government that wants to overthrow the rule of law and the Constitution. That's all it's done. It's been a war on the Constitution, the war on drugs, war on the Constitution, war on property rights, a war on our liberties. That's what it has been from day one. So he says it's far too easy for bad actors to evade these restrictions, to operate without detection when transmitting digital assets. So he wants more control, more surveillance. That's what we continually see from these people. Well, it's not just your money, but it's also your children. Both parents now work full-time in the majority of families. You know, back in the 1950s, I used to talk about this in the late 1980s and early 1990s. I said, well, if you just go back to the 1950s, the income tax was really only about 2%. And you could have one parent working, typically the husband, and you had a better financial situation than with two working parents. Within just a couple of decades, that escalated the income tax to the extent that it was about what the net income contribution of a second spouse working was. By the time you look at all the overhead expenses with your job, look at daycare, other things like that, you're basically going to work just to pay for the increased taxes. Have a good day. Thank you for joining us. The Common Man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.